Something you said, I think, was really important for me about our understanding of some of the difficulties for recovery organisers. So you talked about the metrics, that become difficult for academics doing research and stuff. But I think in some ways there's some of the same issues and pressures that occur in recovery organisations in that world that you talked right at the beginning. The kind of OHID and all that other kind of world, because I think people are looking for the types of outputs, outcomes, and performance monitoring, and they're never going to get it. One of my simple analogies I do often say to people is, if one of your really good markers of recovery is a return to the family Sunday dinner, when has anyone ever seen return to family Sunday dinner on any treatment outcome form? Do you know what I mean?
It's funny you say that, Wulf, because I'm not question you asked to start with, but I will in a second. I've just put in a bid to the Commonwealth of Virginia to look at how do we map and measure recovery as one of the metrics being intergenerational transmission of addiction and crime. And it seems to me like when we did the 2010 evidence review for the Scottish Government, William White quoted two small qualitative studies that showed when fathers achieve sustainable recovery, their sons had better scholastic engagement, attendance, and milestone achievement. And it strikes me that if you want to go for those OHID type measures, because the other thing I agree with you entirely is we make a clinical mistake or a clinical fallacy if we think the benefit of recovery interventions should be incorporated in a body. Because of my social beliefs and social contagion theory, it seems to me we are also disadvantaged in any outcome metric where we only look at the impact on the individual. Because
of course,
and your Sunday dinner falls within that. And it's been really interesting. I'm trying to write something just now for what should the evaluations and outcomes be for inclusive recovery cities? And I'm going to reference another book which I love called The Great American City by Robert Sampson. And I don't know if you know Sampson and Laub's work on desistance from crime. They talk a lot about informal social control, about, getting a job, getting married, looking after your kids, being actively involved in making Sunday lunches, for instance. Robert Sampson's own work, and he's the author of the book, was based on the Project for Human Development in Chicago Neighborhoods, which was a massive US study.
You're just slipping off screen again. Go on, that's it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
brilliant, thank you.
It's just quality control. And he uses a term called collective efficacy.
Yes.
And collective efficacy refers to two things. One is social cohesion in communities, and the second is shared expectations about the likelihood of your neighbours getting involved in pro-social activities and, stopping somebody graffitiing or whatever. And it seems to me like to make collective efficacy the metric for inclusive recovery cities. And it's so, we're not starting to say, as people keep wanting me to say, will there be less drug deaths and less crime and less of course, that's not going to happen. But
I think this is an absolutely fascinating point, and I think it's a really nice one for us to think about concluding this bit of the conversation, because what you're talking for me is at the heart of this. We're calling them, recovery organisations, recovery communities. This is all about people doing more than the individual, and you're absolutely right. It does extend into society and family and everything else. And for too long, we've had a whole thing that's been premeditated on, whether it is in the addictions or in the criminology, but we've been fixing the individual.
And I think we need to fight that pathologized disease body model. And it seems to me like, we're not going to get traction from people who are psychiatrists or doctors, because you're in that. If everything, I don't know what the phrase is, if everything looks like a nail, you've got to be a hammer. And So, for me, I think it's fundamentally about, well, if you're going to have all the stuff we do is out there, and it's about connection and engagement and giving back. And incidentally, Jamie Sadler from Datis would also reject the giving back phrase. He uses reciprocal altruism to say lots of our folk have nothing they have to give back for. They have skills and talent, and it's a fair exchange. And
fair enough. Yeah,
I'm not pulling you up, but it seems to me a good cautionary point to say.
No, absolutely, of course. And I suppose in a way, much of this conversation has been about a challenge toward orthodoxy, but actually, if you already wanted to rephrase that, it's actually about reclaiming some orthodoxy, that actually community and people is at the heart of what humans do. And in many ways, some of what's gone on in the second half of the last century and the early part of this century was actually kind of removing people from.
Well, and for me, one of the really ambitious aims of inclusive recovery cities is to say, can the connectedness of recovery communities inspire similar changes more broadly across? Can they be the glue or the inspiration for re-engaging a range of excluded and marginalized groups and population? And you know as well as I do that one of the things that recovery traditionally treated by professionals does is underestimates the people we work with and underestimates their capabilities. And I think if we think about outcomes for recovery groups and communities, we need to be much more ambitious about saying it has a footprint that goes beyond individual well-being. And
I think you're right. It's got the power to help contribute to the regeneration of boarded up high streets and all sorts of things. Yes.
You go to Barrow in Furness or Kendal, where Dave Hyam inspired the Wells social supermarkets. They're fabulous about not just for providing things for people in recovery, but contributing to the community. This is stuff to make the community a better place for everyone.
And I think I want to now use the other T word. So you right at the beginning talked about treatment as being too transactional. And I think the power of recovery is that it can be transformational. And I think that's it getting the distinction between those two words is really important here. Yes.
Absolutely. No, couldn't agree more.
Okay. Listen, I want to thank you for the time for this interview. David and I will, as you know, we'll reflect on this. We probably will want to come back another time and have another bite at the cherry with you. You've got so much to tell us and for people to learn from. But let me switch the recording off for a moment, and then I'll just tell you what happens now briefly before you have to go. Yes. But thank you, David. Yes.
Isn't it funny when you suddenly realise you are now one of those elders and culture carriers? You're no longer the young person learning your trade.
Yeah, you are no longer the young person. Yeah, well, neither of us are as young as we were when we first met.
Indeed. So, look, I've really enjoyed this, Wulf. So
thank you.
More than happy if you want to do a follow-up.
Brilliant, thank you.